kind of horrifying, and we're all a little surprised that I am still alive. So basically, ask if you got an animal. I will tell an animal story about it if I got one. Otherwise, I will tell you that you have won a non-existent prize for finding an animal I have not irritated at some point in my life. I assure you the stories are relatively funny.
Blue-tailed skink.
I have bothered so many blue-tailed skinks. I don't actually have a good story about blue-tailed skinks because they're little zip lizards. Like, they're great. They're basically wind-up toys that bleed. But
oh my god.
Very frequently your interaction with blue-tailed skinks is something has killed one, look, there it is.
Or here's the tail.
Exactly. But yes, blue-tailed skinks I have bothered. Welcome to Animals I Have Bothered with Seanan McGuire.
Yes.
Hermit crabs or a leopard gecko?
So hermit crabs. I used to have a tank full of hermit crabs that we kept behind the couch. And at the time I had an alligator lizard named Jade. Jade hated you. She has been dead for many decades now. She never met you. She hated you anyway. Out of all the alligator lizards I have ever interacted with in any way, Jade was probably the single most hateful. We don't know why. She just despised everyone. So one day I was holding Jade in my ongoing and futile attempt to get her to calm down about humans enough that we could do something with her, like release her without fear that she would randomly attack neighborhood children, when my cat, Princess, knocked over the hermit crab enclosure, spraying hermit crabs and gravel everywhere. So the hermit crabs start legging it for the safety of under the couch, which is what hermit crabs will do if knocked on the floor. And having lost some hermit crabs forever through this mechanism, because they just find places to die, I bend over to start scooping them. And the motion, unthinkingly, goes like this. Here's the lizard. So the lizard now has the underside of my arm and has clamped down with all of the might of her tiny lizard jaws. She is biting like there is no tomorrow. There is a biting Olympics and she's taken the gold for alligator lizardonia. And I start screaming because that is what you do when an alligator lizard has clamped onto the fatty part of your arm. There is no other useful response in this world. It is actually more painful than some of the venomous snakes I have been bitten by. It is intense in its agony. And so I'm shrieking, and what I'm shrieking is, oh God, I'm sorry, I'll never do it again, I'll never do it again. I'll let you go, I'll give you anything you want, it's okay, you can have it. My mother's boyfriend at the time was asleep in the back of the apartment. He thinks I am being murdered. He comes charging out of the back room with a knife, which, great, it's wonderful to know that you just had a knife in the bed you shared with my mother, that's charming. And what he sees is me standing there with this 5.5-inch lizard hanging off my arm, screaming incoherently. Being out the lizard. So he just looked at me, turned around, and went back to bed.
Oh, sweet.
It took an hour to figure out how to get the lizard off my arm because I wasn't thinking so good because intense pain. The blister that Jade left lasted for 2 months because she had literally bruised all the fat. It was amazing. So I put her back in that enclosure and I kept her there till she died.
Like this?
I eventually figured out that alligator lizards have to breathe. So I put my fingers over her nostrils. At which point she bit my finger. But your finger is much easier to go with than your entire upper arm. So she just kind of flinged off. Shark!
Can that be your next story?
I want to hear a shark story.
Shark story.
Shark? Really? You don't say.
My sister gave me Ed after when my first boyfriend dumped me.
Ed is much better than your first boyfriend.
Ed is much better than my first boyfriend.
Ed is awesome. Shark stories! I've lived near the Pacific Ocean for most of my life. You know what we have in oceans? That's where we keep the sharks. Sharks are pretty chill. They're like big, sort of doofy puppies that like to feel things with their mouths. They're not actually that interested in eating you because you taste bad, but they don't really know what you are, so they're gonna bite you to figure it out.
It's like shark tooth followers.
Exactly. And one of the things that Animal Rescue would occasionally do semi-recreationally, because this is what we do for fun, kids, is go down to the ocean during tiger shark whelping season and gather the baby tiger sharks in buckets and carry them away from the beaches where the swimmers were. because people would drag them out of the water and leave them on the beach to die because, oh, it's a scary, scary shark. So you just have this line of geeks in SPCA shirts with buckets full of sharks marching down the beach in Santa Cruz. What are you doing? We're taking the sharks someplace safer. The ocean is now an unsafe place to keep your sharks? Yes, actually, ever since Jaws, it really has been. We would put them in the bathtub, but they wouldn't like it, and besides, that's full of frogs. So, we would just have our little buckety conga lines down the beach, like transferring the sharks, and most of the time the sharks were a little puzzled and would swim away. But we got this one day where, I don't know what was going on with the currents, we're dumping out the sharks at point A, and they're immediately turning around and swimming back to point B. We could literally watch them swimming alongside us as we were walking back to retrieve more sharks. And we found that we were carrying the same sharks back up the beach. And we're like, what the hell? Are we the shark monorail now? Is this shark Disneyland? What is going on? So we finally had one of us get the genius idea. Best idea, thanks Adam, best idea, to go to Safeway and buy a bunch of chum. By which we mean the seafood stew base that they sell. So he comes back with 10 pounds of assorted chopped fish bits, which we squish together in a bucket until it gets all juicy and gross, and then start chumming the water where we're dumping out the baby sharks. Can anyone guess why this was a terrible plan?
Big sharks.
So then we got to meet the mommy sharks, and the daddy sharks, and the gender non-specific aunt and uncle sharks, and the grandparent sharks. Look at all these sharks. We have so many sharks. And so we're standing there just beholding this Sharkmageddon. Like, it's amazing.
Sharknado?
And then we heard the siren. Because someone has called the local police to report that we are attempting to attract an unreasonable number of sharks. And the police comes down. This poor policeman comes down, and what are you doing? We're with Animal Rescue. What are you rescuing? Ourselves? We're really not clear on that anymore, but we have some sharks. There's an 8.5-foot tiger shark just sort of chilling, like, yo, stop. We didn't go to jail. No, for the most part, the adults just sucked up the chum and ignored the babies because the babies were not that interesting to them. The babies wanted to ride the fucking monorail again. Where are you going, babies? Come back! We did not help sharks after that.
Any cat stories? I have a scar from one of my cats.
Oh, cats.
Whispering around when I really shouldn't have.
How large would you like the cat to be?
As big as possible.
A domestic cat?
As big as possible.
We got votes from two sides. So domestic cats, I have two Maine Coons, Alice and Thomas. Alice is the larger of the two. She is 28 pounds. Thomas, as the smaller of the two, is 25 pounds. My idea of how large a cat should be is not good. It is calibrated very poorly. And they're my babies. They love me very much. Maine Coons are extremely owner-focused. They are devoted in a way that I have rarely encountered from other cats. I do not recommend them if you do not wish to have a small, mostly voiceless, thumbless toddler demanding your attention for 18 years. But if you do, if that sounds good, hey. Maine Coons. Huh? Well, some of them do. Maine Coons, there is no single universal breed trait. And that's actually an important thing to point out because I know folks that have gotten Maine Coons, actual Maine Coons, and been angry when they did not display the one breed trait this person wanted them for. Oh no! Well, it folded in on itself. 5-second rule. No, apparently not. And I know people that have gotten told, oh, this cat is a Maine Coon by a shelter, brought home a wonderful, perfectly serviceable, reasonable cat that just happened to not be a Maine Coon, and then again got mad at it because how dare you not have these attributes. Never assume that what people say about a breed will be true. If a Siamese cat is color pointed, then it is a color pointed Siamese. If it's not, then it is an Oriental short hair or a foreign white. You know, there are all these options. But most Maine Coons like water. They are cool with water. I came home from work one day and I went into the bathroom, as we do, to do what we do in the bathroom. And I had hiked my jeans down and was about 2/3 of the way to the bowl, which is not normally a place where anything interesting happens, when the bowl said, "Meow." I do not remember putting my pants back on or moving, but suddenly I was in the bathtub with my back against the wall, staring at the toilet, where my cat was curled up having a nice nap in the spot. Because she had been overly warm. You have rarely seen anything looking smugger than a Maine Coon that has found water in which to sit, and Alice had found a private hot tub. So I told my housemate, "The cat has taken to sleeping in the toilet. Please look before you sit." Now, I recognize that I have no common sense and I'm a weirdness magnet, so sometimes I will say things that sound somewhat unbelievable. Sometimes I will say things that make you go, "Really?" But on the whole, I think it's better to believe people when they say things that do not do you harm, especially where failure to believe them could do you harm. So he had to have 6 stitches in his scrotum. He stopped using my bathroom after that. Now, on the larger cat side of things, I started out in reptile rescue, which means that I would provide a short-term home to reptiles that were of an appropriate size to fit in any of the enclosures that I did not currently have reptiles of my own in. Which is an important specification because I had a Burmese python named Adric for several years, and during that time I couldn't take large snakes because Adric did not like to share with other snakes. He liked his enclosure to himself. So I get a call one day. "Hi, are you still licensed for large indigenous and non-indigenous animals?" And I said, "Well, I'm licensed for large indigenous and non-indigenous reptiles." And they said, "We're bringing your new license with us." And I said, "Why?" And they said, "Well, because it's not a lizard this time. See you in an hour." And I said, "Okay." Now, at the time, I had a backyard that was a full acre of land that only contained a Great Dane. And you had to file with the folks at Animal Rescue what you had living on your property, because there are some animals that just don't coexist. So they're like, right now she has 4 rats, 2 cats, and a Great Dane, and an acre of land, and a mountain lion. Her name was Miss Kitty. She thought she was a golden retriever. She had been removed from the wild by assholes when she was very, very small. They had had her declawed. Once her adult incisors grew in, they had her teeth filed. What? She genuinely thought she was a dog, and she could not be rehabilitated for cohabitation with other mountain lions because they would try to say hello, and she would go, "I don't know what's happening, and you're pointy on way too many ends." So Miss Kitty came to live with us, and Miss Kitty was very happy because she had a dog to be with. She was part of the pack again. And Argo was very unhappy because suddenly there was a cat twice her size. And this dilemma did not go over well with me, especially since I had a twin bed. Do you know how many humans you can fit into a twin bed with a Great Dane and a full-grown mountain lion? It turns out the answer is not me. And so Miss Kitty and I were having a lovely time. Miss Kitty especially enjoyed her favorite game, which was stand up on your hind feet, press your front paws against the chain link fence, and yowl at the neighbors. The neighbors really enjoyed that game too. They called the cops a lot. They wanted the police to come and see the fun. Such fun. And periodically, Animal Rescue would check in with me. Hey, you know, we're still looking for a permanent home for Miss Kitty. We're sending you money again to buy more cat food. It's all good, it's all good. And then I get the world's call that you don't want, which is, hey, you still licensed? I have a mountain lion right now, so I certainly hope I'm still licensed. I am licensed for native and non-native mammals up to 500 pounds. Please don't bring me an elephant. And they say, yeah, so we are bringing you a non-native mammal. It weighs 132 pounds. Really, what is it? We're bringing you a non-native mammal. It weighs 132 pounds. Really, what is it? We're bringing you a non-native mammal. Are you going to tell me no? I'm like, well, shit. And I started doing research, like, what is a non-native mammal that weighs 130 pounds? What could this possibly be? What? I don't know. Well, you got the comment, right? So they show up, and they have brought me an emu. And I think quite logically, that's not a mammal. And they say we took a vote. And that is how Gus the emu came to live with us. And Gus the emu's favorite game was follow Miss Kitty to the chain link fence, wait for her to yowl, and then when the neighbors come out to yell at the mountain lion, stick his long snaky neck through the chain link fence and fight the shit out of the neighbors. And then the cops came and Argo eventually had a heart attack and passed away, as sadly happens to many Great Danes. This was back in the early 90s, which is why there is not an entire Tumblr devoted to Miss Kitty. But Argo eventually had a heart attack and she passed, and she had a good, happy Great Dane life before that happened. We have no regrets. Miss Kitty died about 5 years ago after spending a very long time at the Lindsay Wildlife Museum in Pleasant Hill, California, where she delighted quite a few children and gave a lot of people the opportunity to touch a mountain lion, which they would otherwise possibly never have had. She taught a lot of people to respect California's wildlife, which is wonderful. And we ate Gus. Because Gus was an asshole. Gus was actually sent to an emu farm to make more emu. And he was such an asshole that none of the lady emu wanted anything to do with it. I mean, this emu farm did have one lesbian emu, because the lesbian emu really wanted to make it with the emu farmer. And she was only nice to women. And the emu mating dance, you're video recording this, right? I'm gonna need you to stop for a second.